Welcome to this The Legends podcast. I'm Sarah Faruya from Sarah Faruya Coaching, and today I have the most incredible legend with me who's here to talk to me. I believe there are many ways to lead a life and everybody has stories, and I am so thrilled to invite today a delightful friend and companion of mine from way back in the day in Japan. It is Petra Laptiste. Hi, Petra.
Hi, Sarah.
How are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks. I'm good. How are
Excellent,
you?
excellent. Now, this is one woman who encouraged me to kind of up my style game and also to kind of show my beautiful round body more. So in honor of that today, I'm bejeweled and be busted. Seriously, you gave me so much confidence over the years because of the way that you show up in your beautiful style.
Yeah.
So, and also just to note, Petra is in Abu Dhabi now, and she has 2 kittens there. So if they make appearances or she's kind of playing with them, that's all good as well, because that's one of the many ways to lead a life. And there are many ways to be professional, and there are many ways to be on camera. And I encourage this. So let's get into it. So first, I would love to introduce Petra to you. Petra's originally from Canada, and her family is from Trinidad and Tobago. And she is a technologically savvy cross-cultural language instructor and corporate trainer with nearly 20 years of domestic and international professional experience. Her work spans decades, causes continents, platforms, from writing and editing business communications to professional coaching and cultural sensitivity training. Oh, I might be talking to you about that. I am also an effective communicator. So she is also an effective communicator and a diversity-driven leader who has adopted innovative change models and utilized high-quality technology to reach objectives. With this unique arsenal of skills and strengths, she combines years of teaching and interdisciplinary studies to create innovative solutions and environments that foster growth to positively impact business strategies. She is a creative thinker with strong planning, project management, and client relationship acumen, and she has successfully developed and seamlessly executed initiatives with client-centric mindfulness that enable organizations to transform and thrive. In addition to that, she has gone from Canada to Japan, many trips to Trinidad and Tobago. And on that note, she used to run a company called Carry Freak, which was her side hustle or her passion project when she lived in Japan. And that's one of the ways in which she and I connected as well, through For Empowering Women, FEW, the Organization for Professional Networking in Japan. And I attended some of her fantastic events that she put on there. Sadly, I never got to go and be in the carnival with her in Trini, but she did take people over there and give them amazing tours of not only Trinidad and Tobago, but also Jamaica, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. She taught me how to palance, which is now a somewhat dated dance technique. And she also taught my husband how to grind on me, which is, I can assure you, a sight for sore eyes. Luckily, I wasn't wearing just the carnival outfit. It was on over my clothes. But if you can imagine me with a tiny Japanese man trying to behave like carnival people in Trinidad and Tobago, that was just such a terrific experience. And we also cooked food there as well. 10 years ago, for FEW's 30th anniversary, we celebrated in many different ways, but one of them was we put on a panel. And it was called 10, 20, 30. And we chose 3 people from the FEW community to represent the FEW community from 10 years in Japan, 20 years in Japan, and 30 years in Japan. And in addition to amazing Doreen Simmons, who has since passed away, who was around 80 at the time, who was off 30 plus years, and lovely Kim, who ran the Tyler Foundation, now Shine On Kids. Petra was our amazing 10-year representative for FEW Japan, and it was just such a terrific panel. There was laughter, tears, And of course, the cheeky anecdotes of Doreen Simmons. So without further ado, let's get into this, Petra. Is there anything I've missed there?
Well, I'd like to add that, okay, while I was in Japan, I was focusing on Trinidad and Tobago. That's my father's side.
Yeah.
But my mother is Grenadian. So she's from the beautiful Spice Island of Grenada, which is not too far away from Trinidad and Tobago. So that's what, I'd also like to add. So I hadn't had a chance while I was in Japan to promote both countries.
Yeah.
So I focused on Trinidad because I had a bigger carnival. But the plan, if I had stayed there longer, was to kind of integrate Grenada into it too. So yes, so Grenada also. And here's a representation of some tropical fruits and vegetables by a Grenadian artist, actually.
So beautiful. The art in the background is absolutely gorgeous. I'm delighted that you've got that up there for us to feast our eyes on, as well as listen to your story.
Japan represented here in a scarf.
Yeah.
In Japan. And these two are from a Jamaican artist in Japan.
Who is that Jamaican artist in Japan?
Yeah.
Yeah? Who is it?
I can't remember her name now.
Okay, well, maybe somebody can drop that into the comments if somebody's watching and knows who that Jamaican artist is in Japan. Maybe somebody from the Legacy Foundation might know who that is.
Right. I will find her name.
Yeah.
Oh, Janelle. Okay, Janelle.
Janelle. Okay. Yeah. Gorgeous.
Yeah.
Gorgeous. All right.
Yeah.
So I'll go on a magical mystery tour to find her details and find out about her art after this. So my first question to you is, Petra, tell me a story, fictional, historical, or anecdotal, that's had an impact or influence in your life.
Wow. It's because I was thinking about that question, and there are so many stories. Oh, there's so many. But I could start off by maybe bits and pieces of stories that were told to me by my grandparents, like especially my mother's grandparents, who were from Grenada, they passed on. But as a child, they wanted to make sure that we understood, I guess, where we were from and who we were. So me and my siblings, right? So they would just give us ideas, like, or say that, Grenada is the spice island. When you get off the plane, you smell spices, which is actually true. It's a weird thing. Grenada is such a beautiful place. But yeah, I would say those are some of the bits and pieces of stories that I remember. Also on my late father's side, in Trinidad, he told us a lot about growing up. So he would also he used to talk about back home, back home was Trinidad, even though he was a citizen of Canada all his life, like for as long as, I was alive, since I was born, sorry. Home to him was Trinidad. So back home when he was a kid, with my uncle, they used to go here and there. They used to, talk to the neighbors about all kinds of things. They used to eat this food. They used to go to church and just give us an idea of what Trinidad was like when he was growing up back in the 50s, 60s. And then the stories of his immigration to Canada, what it was like for him. And just understanding that who you are is important. You have to know yourself, right? And I would also say that, so from my mother's side, my dad's side, putting that together, some of the stories, the actual stories that I remember were the books that my father had in his library. He had collected a lot of books. He had read a lot of books. And as a teenager, I started, feeling like, wondering who I was. Montreal is pretty, multicultural. I had a mix of friends who were, Caribbean, who were Indian, East Indian, Chinese, Greeks. I went to a school that was predominantly Greek, actually. So it wasn't like I didn't feel comfortable. It's just that I had this curiosity. And especially because in Montreal at that time, in the 80s and 90s, we didn't have a lot of Black Canadian people to look up to.
Mhm.
So it was always, hip hop and stuff from the States. Plus it was also dancehall reggae that was booming from Jamaica. And then a little bit of like calypso and soca from the rest of the Caribbean. So in my dad's library, he had old copies of a lot of James Baldwin books.
Mhm.
He had, so for example, Go Tell It on the Mountain, Notes of a Native Son, and he had also Native Son by Richard Wright, Soul on Ice by Eldridge Cleaver, the Autobiography of Malcolm X by, now I'm forgetting his name. He wrote Roots also. Oh my gosh. So those,
No.
forget who wrote it. But yeah, those books, I would say Soul on Ice, the Autobiography of Malcolm X were profound in forming my sense of, okay, yes, I'm a Black person in North America, of Caribbean parents, and before that of African ancestors. And it helped me really, really start to understand and see, unfortunately, the injustices that we were around.
Yeah.
And not to let myself, I guess, feel sorry for myself, feel sorry for being Black, like there's nothing to feel sorry about. And also to feel very proud of who I was and what I came from and who I came from. So I would say those books helped that feeling in me, So yeah.
Beautiful. I just got goosebumps as you were saying that. Like that's my like FBG's full body goosebumps. Gorgeous. Yeah, amazing. So those books, we'll drop a little reading list into the notes for this show, and cite those books for those people who are interested in knowing more about them. So through those books and through your father's stories and your grandparents' stories, you had this really strong sense of who you were.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that strong sense of who you are.
Wow. Well, okay.
That's a big question.
It's a huge question, because then it also comes to the present from my mom. So who she is now and who she has been also adds to that, because I feel that, okay, this is the 10-year anniversary of my father's passing.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you. And I feel that I'm even learning more now about what I thought I knew, like what my grandparents told me, and then now that, my mother is luckily still here, she fills in all these extra pieces to who I am and who my brothers are, who we are basically.
Yeah.
And I could say that Grenada, where she's from, is a place that, how can I explain it? I feel sometimes it's almost like a fantasy place. It's like, does this place really exist? It's such a beautiful place, but it's so filled with sadness.
Yeah.
Because, just like most of the Caribbean and most of the Americas, this legacy of slavery,
yeah,
and this legacy of genocide and stuff, but these are just beautiful places, and small places. And then on my father's side, he's, from Trinidad, and I would say Trinidad and Tobago. So most of our family, so the Laptiste family came actually from the smaller island, Tobago. And then they kind of just migrated over to Trinidad. But he was from a village in Trinidad in the southern part called Rio Claro. And there were a lot of, back when he was young, there were a lot of people from East India, right? So basically the history of Trinidad is where after the slaves rebelled so much, the British needed more, they needed more workers. So they got indentured servants from China and from India. So a lot of them were brought there to Trinidad, and most of them stayed in the South. So my dad grew up in a multicultural, environment. So with East Indians, he ended up eating East Indian food a lot. His neighbors were East Indian, but he was also Black, considered like African. So I would say that all of that although there's so many layers to who I am.
Right.
You know, I've been here in Abu Dhabi. There's a lot of East Indians here. I've had people ask me, you know, oh, do you like, have you ever tried Indian food? I'm like, yeah, I know how to make it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know how to make it very well. It has a bit of a different flavor from the Caribbean, but it's still the basic. It's the same thing. We eat roti, we eat all these parathas and curries and things like that. So then, yeah, so it's it's such a complicated question, you know, but it's an interesting one.
Well,
And
you answered it beautifully.
Yeah,
You answered it beautifully. And now my mind is going back to when you did like a small lecture for us about the food we were going to prepare and how some of that was actually East Indian as well. And I'm remembering now the history that you gave us of that region. Yeah. There's a lot of sadness in those islands, and you know, I hold that and you hold that. It's important that we all hold that. How do you, or how do we kind of, is it insurmountable? I think it's probably part inherent in our histories.
Yeah.
I'm just interested to know if you have any insights there, or I'm not asking how do we get over it, please. Nothing that trite. I'm interested in how that gets held in a society, in a country, in a place.
I understand. Like the thing is, because also, and it's a really interesting question, because when you ask someone like me who actually does have citizenship of those two countries due to, you know, by descent.
Yes.
The thing is, I'm also seen as a foreigner still. I am a foreigner because I actually didn't live in those countries, although I visited them many times. So the answer maybe from a person like me from the diaspora is a bit different than somebody who actually still lives there, right? So someone might be like, oh, well, how can she answer that? You know? Sure. But you know, my answer to that is that it has to be it has to be an introspective. It has to be. So it's like, I don't know if we could say, oh, this person has to do this, the government has to do this, I think we could just maybe say, how about we look into ourselves and see what we can do from there. Interesting. You know, it's so complicated.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to hold in this system, and it's mine to hold too. And when I say mine, I mean my people, my country. Well, it's hard to say because we both live in Japan. We've both also kind of made moves as well. But yeah, I think I hadn't thought of it like that, so well put as you just put it about Grenada and so on.
Yeah.
Back to your,
really
go on.
Enjoy this about you, Sarah, because I really find that, you know, you have made a lot of, you're very open to listening, and just, you know, rather than just saying, oh, well, why is it like this for you? Like you're eloquent in the way that you want to understand it and how it really affects, you know, those of us who are not white, even though, like, you know, it's easy to say, oh yeah, well, you're white, so you did it, like your people did this, you know, but it's like not, I don't even know how to say it sometimes. I think it's the way some people approach it, and I appreciate the way you have always approached it, rather than some other people who might ask some very weird, cringy questions that make me want to just look at them and just actually just walk away and not even acknowledge them, you know. So I feel like it's the way you approach, you know, these issues of institutionalized racism, things like that, is very open, whereas some people look at it as they want to still see us as we're monkeys in a zoo. Okay. Like it's a show and it's not affecting them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think, yes, I think so. I think so. I'm just digesting what you said, but 15 years ago may have been a different story for me, but through living here, if I wouldn't have and I mean, I think that anyway, it's just, it's a life. I think you have to be open as a white person to being embarrassed and ashamed and confronted and have a lot of cognitive dissonance and be able to hold all that in your nervous system and in your heart and open big space for that. And if you don't have the techniques or the information or the will or the systems around you to kind of like there's no question for me about that. I'm just constantly taking direction, and that introspection piece is so important. That's what I've been called to do by the people who I would consider to be my great teachers in this area, who are largely based in the US. But I would consider you to be one of those people as well. I think you've been an incredible presence in that way, and just having that presence and delivering this education to people while you were there. About your background and about that place, and being very frank and honest about that as well is about, when I say that place, I mean Trinidad and Tobago specifically. And being in those rooms with people and bringing such joy, but also such information to us. You're instrumental in that stuff, and we all hold it then, and we all, honestly, when me and Tracy get together, we often talk about that fabulous party you put on for us. And actually Kristen, who recently did a drawing meditations workshop for us, again, that was on kind of sexy stuff, because I always want to kind of go where we're not supposed to, and but in a loving way, in a gentle way, and no, not always in a gentle way actually, but and Case and I often shout palance and start palancing. So
you know what? I'll tell you a secret about palance.
Go on.
Because it was played so much, a lot of Trinidadians have decided to not like it.
Of course, that's what happens, right?
It's like really now, like if it gets played, like people will be like, okay,
so passe.
I'm not doing it. It's too much. So it's
it came on Japanese TV and we were so excited. Don't know why. They must have been doing a feature on that part of the world, or on, actually it was probably more likely to be on the communities in Japan who live in Japan. I don't remember what it was now, but we were both so excited, and I think I was taking screenshots and sending them to you of the television. Anywho, so that's amazing, and thank you for sharing this stuff with you, and please don't hold back on saying your really frank and honest stuff about this as well. Coincidentally, it's Black History Month. You've been on my list of people I wanted to interview for ages, and but coincidentally, I might add, like you, and so this is bringing a richness to my own personal learning of the history that doesn't get told, the history that gets left behind, the history that gets left on the table. And the British Chamber of Commerce is trying to bring a little bit of that to the fore about Britain this month as well. Great. So so this is so interesting. So we've talked about Grenada, we talked about Trinidad and Tobago. How did you get from there to Canada? Okay, my brain's firing a little bit now. Do you know where your ancestry is in Africa?
Oh, good question. Okay, so one of my amazing cousins, her name is Jean Laptiste. She lives in the States, and she's also an educator. And she's so amazing. She is, I would say, one of the historians of the Laptiste family.
Okay. And
she was able to get a lot of information from maybe a few generations back on, let's say, the founding Laptiste man in Trinidad or in Tobago. So we're not sure of the full story, but as it generally goes, most of the slaves who came to any parts of America, from the Caribbean, South America, North America, did had their names taken away from them.
Yeah.
Right. So Laptiste could have been Baptiste.
Mm-hmm.
We're not sure. It could have been La Baptiste, Le Baptiste. But we also found, or she found, a name in Mali called Lapti, like Lapti.
Mm-hmm.
So if anyone out there is Malian, if you can please let us know if there actually is a name like that, please tell us. I don't do the DNA tests. I have never done those tests.
Yeah, I haven't.
Yeah, I'm not really comfortable with those, but that's another story.
Yeah.
But, so she found something about Mali, and and then living in Canada. So let's say before I ever went to Japan, a lot of West Africans, especially Nigerians, would ask me, "Oh, are you Nigerian?" I'm like, "No." They're like, "Well, you look Nigerian." I was like, "Oh, okay, possible." So that always stuck in my head, okay, maybe since Nigerians are claiming me, probably, our family probably came from around there. So, and then looking at pictures of my father's side, yeah, it's possible. On my mother's side, we're not exactly sure. We do know that there was some mix with some of the French, I guess, slave owners also. So in Tobago, yes, and in Grenada. And then there were also mixes with the native people of Grenada before the Europeans came, the Caribs. So that's what we know on my mother's side, both of my mother's sides. And then interestingly enough, when I first went to Africa, the first African country I went to was in Ghana. And that was while I was living in Japan. And wherever I went, I was not claimed as any Ghanaian tribe. Like I was a foreigner. So most people thought, okay, she's from Nigeria. Like seriously, people go, "Oh, so you're Nigerian?" So I was like, so again, I'm like, I'm in Africa. So people in Africa, in West Africa, are starting to, see me as the features and whatever of a Nigerian, whichever tribe. I didn't know which tribe they were talking about. So more recently, I've been to East Africa, Tanzania, Kenya, Rwanda. And in Tanzania and Kenya, people have been claiming me.
I love this idea that like you're in the middle of Africa and everyone's kind of pulling at you, going, "She's ours, she's ours."
Exactly, yeah. So in Tanzania, it's not like how it was for me in Ghana, where in Ghana, they're like, "Look, you're definitely not one of us." In Tanzania and Kenya, they're like, "Oh, full Swahili, full, like, look at me, talk, talk, talk." And if I looked at them and I answered very basic Swahili, they'd be like, "Huh? Like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Like, how do you not know? Like, you're one of us." So then I'd explain in English, obviously, and they're like, "Huh? You're not like your family, no one?" I'm like, "Nope, not that I know of." And they're like, "Okay, if that's what you say." So it's always been for me, like in East Africa, like I feel like they think I'm crazy because they're like, "How do you not realize that you look like us?" And then here in Abu Dhabi also, because there are a lot of Africans here.
Yeah.
I've been spoken to in Ganda, which is the Ugandan language. And also I remember that I was at Spinny's and the woman, said something and I said, "Huh?" And she goes, "You're not from Uganda?" I said, "No." She goes, "Are you sure?" I said,
"You're not sure."
Like my cousin. I said, "Oh, okay, maybe I'm Ugandan." So she goes, "I think you're Ugandan." So I said, "Okay." So that's basically it. I don't know. So, but someone did tell me in Kenya that because the West Africans and East Africans claim me, it could be due to the Great Bantu Migration. that happened thousands of years ago,
Wow.
where people had begun in East Africa and spread across. So I'm part of that. So I don't know.
It's a magical mystery tour. The Bantu migration. What's the Bantu migration?
That I didn't have. He was a taxi driver, and I.
Okay. I learned most of my Japanese knowledge from taxi drivers.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a long taxi ride, but he just said that it had something to do with the fact that because, humanity started like in East Africa, that the whatever characteristics that I appear to have is what traveled all the way across the southern sub-Sahara region to West Africa. So the traits that I have can be seen in many different peoples. So
fascinating.
Yes.
I've got homework here. Bantu.
Yes.
Me and Professor Google are going to be busy tonight.
Right. I remember asking him, I said, okay, in Kenya, I said, what tribe do I look like I come from? So he said the Luo. So that's Luo. And then he said, well, you could also be the Kikuyu too. I said, okay. I said, any others? He goes, no, those two, Luo, Kikuyu. So I said, okay. And then he goes, no. Okay, third, Swahili. So I said, okay. So I said, okay, because in Tanzania, the Swahili people are the ones in Zanzibar, pretty much along the coast. Yeah. So those are the three tribes that he feels that I could come from. So in Nigeria, so I've asked Nigerians, so I said, which tribes do you think I could come from? So most people say the Yoruba. So I said, okay.
Wow.
So yeah, there's a lot of research to be done.
There is. That's my night sorted. Amazing. Just out of curiosity, because I'm reluctant to do a DNA test as well. My brother has, and unsurprisingly, we are super Northern European English. We're very big, white. I'm actually used to be a redhead. Yes. So there's some Scottish stuff in there as well. But across that band, he got it back, and it was about 90% from that region. But I'm reluctant to have. I'm reluctant for some reason. Why are you reluctant? I'm just simply curious. You don't have to answer.
Know where my DNA is going. I don't know.
Just don't need to know.
I just don't know how they're going to use my DNA after.
Yeah. Yes, I see what you mean. Sorry, I was in the kind of metaphorical, where's my DNA going? No, you mean, where's my DNA going? Who owns that database? What happens if they're taken? Yeah, I get you. Yeah, I get you.
Yeah.
Amazing. So now from Trinidad and Tobago and Grenada to Canada, what's that story?
Well, my wonderful parents. So my mom, Erica, and my dad, my late father, Sherwin.
What's his name? Sherwin.
Sherwin.
Shout out to Sherwin. This is dedicated to you, this episode.
Dedicated to Daddy. Yes. Yeah. May he rest in peace.
Yeah.
So like Sherwin Williams, he was named after Sherwin Williams.
Who's Sherwin Williams? I'm sorry.
It's the name of the paint store. And my grandfather was a pastor at a church, and he was also a part-time painter.
Amazing.
And I guess he liked the name Sherwin. And pretty much every other Sherwin I've ever met in my life is from Trinidad.
Okay.
It's really weird.
Yeah.
So my parents, so my dad, his story, he has a very interesting story. So in the late 60s, he decided that he wanted to go on vacation to see his cousin in Canada. And at that time, he was in the police force in Trinidad. And, that was going to be his career and everything. And he told us this story so many times. So basically from that, he had said that, he wanted to go and see his cousin. So he went, and he decided that he liked it. So he had applied for, I think, a police job in Toronto. And then I don't remember if he got the job or not, or if he got accepted. I don't remember that. But he did decide to enroll in university. So at that time, my alma mater, Concordia, was called Sir George Williams University. So he went to Sir George and he studied. So he stayed in Canada. And he met my mom, Erica, who had been in Canada a few years before that because she came with her family from Grenada. So my mother's story, which is also quite interesting, is because my mother's father's mother, right? So my mother's paternal grandmother was living in Montreal as a domestic since the 1920s.
Wow.
So she had been able to give my grandfather in Grenada a great life with all the remittances and so on, you know, so he was well taken care of. So he was able to have his footing in Canada. So he went to Canada. He also went to Sir George University, Williams University. And then he sponsored my grandma and then my mom and her siblings, my aunts and uncles, and then a whole lot of other cousins over the years. So from this, I would say 60s, 70s, 80s, a lot of my Grenadian family has come to Canada. And again, new information was that, you know, a lot of my cousins were taking care of me when, you know, I was a little infant. So all these things I only recently found out, honestly. They'd be like, you know, we actually took care of you, Petra. So I didn't know that. So yeah, so they met in Montreal on a bus, on the 124 bus one evening. My dad was staring at my mom. And someone, I guess, was between them and noticed. So he or she, I don't remember if it was a he or she, let them sit together and talk.
Well, there's a story. There's a story. I have a couple of friends over here, Chris and Catherine, who also met on a bus in Scotland.
Wow.
So cool.
Yeah. So cool. And that's the story. That's the story.
And so you have how many siblings?
Well, I have 2 brothers and I have a sister. So it's the 4 of us.
Big family.
Yeah, 3 of us grew up together, and then we met our wonderful sister Krista a few years later. So she is a wonderful addition to the Laptiste family. So
lovely.
Yeah.
Amazing. It's really what a fascinating story as well. There's always all these little bits and pieces hanging around in families, and then people unfold those bits and pieces for you as time goes by, right? Yeah. My grandma, on her, like, the last couple of years of her life, started revealing all kinds of stuff to us that we were like, what? Like, really, like, oh, where you question all your stories, right? You're right. Like, oh,
everything. Yeah.
Oh. and that's one of the reasons I love stories. That's one of the reasons I love storytelling, because it helps us to I think it helps us to question things all the time, but also it's it just shows us the many ways to lead a life. I mean, that's, you know, the real thing, especially from the coaching perspective, is to allow people to understand that there are many ways to do things.
So many ways.
So many ways.
And I actually try to tell them, like, you know, I teach high school students right now, girls, and in a very different society.
Yes.
You know, and, you know, that's one thing I actually was talking to them about this past week, that, you know, there's no one way to lead a life. And as long as you're true to yourself, and as long as, you know, again, here, you it's very important to have your parents and your family's blessings. So as long as you can share your goals with your family and have them understand that you're helping yourself, your family, your community as a whole, then, you know, once you have that, then just do your best, you know. So
beautiful.
Yeah, there's not one way. And it's not just because you want to be, for example, a doctor. Like, there's so many types of doctors. There's so many. And there's so many ways to get to being a doctor. You
There
may
are
not
many routes.
you may not go directly from bachelor, master, doctorate. Like not everybody does that, you know? So
How do you navigate? I mean, it sounds like you're really good at this, like navigating those cultural lines there.
Mhm.
It sounds like you're very sensitive to it while at the same time being encouraging. What's your philosophy there?
Oh, I don't know if it's a philosophy. I just feel that my parents from young, like, I don't know if they explicitly told us, but I just remember this feeling that we had to always respect people's cultures. Like we had to be proud, we had to know our culture, know that, okay, yes, we were born in Canada, but we're not, we may not be seen as Canadians, right? But we still have to respect other people. And I think also maybe I was lucky in the Montreal in the school board that we were in. They had a lot of discussions when we were kids, like in moral and religious education. They got us to think about, you know, critically think about religions and morality and ethics. I think that also helped a bit, and the fact that yeah, there were a lot of students, a lot of like people I went to school with who were just like me, first generation born in Canada.
Mhm.
So all of our parents came from somewhere else, whether it was an English speaking country or not English speaking country. And it was this way, it was mostly this ethic of, okay, we know that I like the word hegemony, we're gonna,
Yeah.
they're there to push us down. So we're here to work and do our best and make sure our kids do what they need to do to get out of the bottom, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and I feel that when I was in elementary school, most of my friends whose parents were immigrants, like mine, we didn't necessarily live in the projects. Because I don't know, Montreal didn't have huge projects that much, but we lived in, I guess, lower income areas. And then by high school, and okay, how can I say this? So in elementary school, okay, we lived in a house. My father had bought a house, right? Which was great. But not a lot of my friends' parents had bought houses at that point.
Mm.
However, in high school, most of my friends' parents had bought houses. So it was, let's say, a 10-year difference, like a 10-year period where these immigrant families worked to save to buy houses, you know?
Love that too. That's a brilliant story. And that just, again, it shows you that there's no monolithic way to do things as well.
Yeah.
I guess as well, if you're talking just on a very practical level, and the same, I suppose, for living in anywhere in multicultural, is when you go to somebody else's house and
Mhm.
their culture is like radically different from yours. Everything's different. The smell is different. The pictures on the wall are different. The food is different. The ways are different, like
Yeah.
take your shoes off. Okay.
Yeah.
Or
And
like,
all those things. And the
yeah.
funny thing is, down the street, like the where we lived when I was in elementary school, was in like I guess, a suburb of Montreal, Saint Laurent. And just a few houses down from mine was one of my friends, Christine, and her family was Greek, right? And it's funny, even though, okay, my parents were Caribbean, spoke English, her parents were Greek, spoke Greek. When we went, both of our houses, we had the living rooms that we couldn't touch. Like the way
Right.
our house was, like the living room was in the front of the house, but we couldn't really sit there unless there were guests.
Yeah.
Like we couldn't,
The
right?
good room.
The good room.
Yeah. Mhm.
And in her house too, like the living room, and they still had plastic on the
Yeah.
couch, like at my
Yeah.
grandmother's house,
Yeah.
basically. There was plastic on the couch. And they had, I remember those black velvet pictures, like either with grease or some kind of cultural thing, on the wall. And we had like the black velvet, like Trinidad and Grenada on the wall. So the smells of food were different, but it was the basic idea was the same.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. I kind of get the couch thing.
Yeah.
Like if it wasn't like not very stylish,
Right.
I'd go for that. Definitely. I get it. I totally get it.
Yeah,
Keep it
because
nice.
you spend so much money
Yeah,
on the couch, you don't want any dirt on it.
exactly. And they do get filthy. Absolutely. Love it. I have a quick question. I love
Yeah.
your bracelets.
Oh,
Is that like that? Is that those shells? What do you call them?
this is the cowrie. Yeah, the cowrie
Look
shell.
what I have on my desk as well.
Oh, look at that.
That
Very
I get in
nice.
Kagoshima. I think they're so
Oh,
beautiful
yeah,
off the
they're
beach in Japan, but aren't they sacred in some parts?
yes. I'm not sure all of the tribes that use them, but
Yes.
I know in many West African and East African cultures, they were used as currency,
Oh,
as money for trading.
yeah.
But basically like these are silver, and the reason why I have these, again, these were made for me by a Black American jeweler. And I have quite a bit of his jewelry in my closet, earrings and all kinds of stuff. So I had these made. I asked him to make these because I needed something to replace the ones that my grandmother had given me when I was born. So my mother's mother, in Grenada, there's a lot of Grenadians who wear these, specifically Grenadians. Other islands do too, but for whatever reason, I remember, was it 3 years ago, I'd gone to Grenada and I'm in the line coming off the plane at immigration. I just look at people's wrist, right wrist, this.
Yeah.
It was so man, woman, child, this. So I think whatever tribes we came from, maybe more of one tribe was in Grenada and held on to this legacy of these. I don't know. I can't explain it, but it's supposed to prevent the evil eye at
Lovely.
birth.
Love
Yeah.
it. I love tracing these stories, and then I do actually love imagining them out as well somewhere. Even like, I don't know if it's just a Catholic thing or if it's just a certain parts of Britain thing. Is we similarly, when we're babies, we get these little tiny silver bracelets that kind of, they stretch a little bit so that you can wear them when you get a bit older, but then you replace them when you're older. But like, yeah, they kind of link over like that. And like so many people I knew had those when they were babies, and then you just kind of keep them, and well, you know, they get lost somewhere along the line. But yeah, I love these little traditions that all link together.
Yeah, and the thing is, the interesting thing is the one that I had that my grandmother gave me was a bit thinner, and I had it in Japan. I used to wear it all the time, and she passed away the same year my dad did, and it broke actually right like after my dad passed. So like she passed in July, he passed in November. Around December, it broke. Yeah. And then one of my brothers, Sean, his broke too.
Wow.
Yeah. So we're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. What do you make that mean?
Well, we were nervous. Actually, no, I think all three of ours. It was Sean and Shane's, all of us, my two brothers and mine broke. So we were like weirded out. And my conclusion was that her, how could I say it? Her protection, like we didn't need her protection anymore. Like we were on our own, but not like she left us alone, but we just didn't need it as much, I guess. It was just like, okay, now it's time for you to do your own thing. So this was doing my own thing.
Beautiful. I'm getting a little kind of witchy feeling about kind of that it's like it's you're it now kind of thing, like I'm gone. Now you're the next me or something, like, you know, because at some point we do have to kind of become the adults and take our place as elders, right?
That's what it is. Yeah.
Well, it could be. I mean, again, this is just me making up stories in my incredibly imaginative head.
Me too. Well, and if I can say what, if I can tell you another story about
Oh,
my,
please keep them coming.
okay, here's another story that just came to my mind because talking about her, and this has to do with Japan.
Mm.
So in the last place I was living in Japan was in Yokosuka, and
No way.
yeah,
I live
so
near Yokosuka now.
yeah, that's true. You live in
Yeah.
Yokosuka. Oh,
Yeah.
it's so beautiful. Oh my gosh.
Gorgeous, isn't
Oh,
it? Love
so
it.
beautiful. So yeah, so I was living there and it was in the summer. So it was, let me see, it would have been, so again, she passed 10 years ago. So that was 2011. So it was the summer of 2012, right? And we all know how humid and crazy hot Japanese summers are, right? So I had a small yard, and like if you put if you have all the gravel and pebbles in your yard, you're gonna get weeds.
Yeah.
So right after the rain season, weeds. And I knew that, okay, I was gonna come home after work one day and just weed out everything. So I had come back home and it was still afternoon, it was still sunny out, and I noticed that the weeds were gone. So I was like, okay, this is weird. So I get inside the house, hear the doorbell ring, open the door, and I see this little old lady, little old
Oba-chan. Yeah.
Oba. Yeah. So I was like, oh, okay. So she's like, konnichiwa. So I was like, oh, konnichiwa. Genki desu ka? So I was like, oh, genki yo. So however she explained it in Japanese was that she's like, you saw what I did outside. And she's tiny, tiny and frail looking. I was like, you did that? And she's like, So I looked at her and like her expression was very much like my grandmother's,
Wow.
very much. And the thing is that people may not realize that, okay, like they might think, well, why would you think your grandmother would look like a Japanese woman? So as I mentioned, a lot of Grenadians come from Carib people, and the Caribs look like Japanese people with tans.
Yes.
Okay, so so that's what my mother looks like, and that's what my grandmother looked like. So this woman, her expression looked like my grandmother's.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay. So I asked her if she wanted any water because I'm like, with this old lady, she just did this
Weeded
backbreaking.
my garden.
Yeah. So she's like, okay. So I said, do you want to come in? She goes, no. So I was like, okay. So I went to get her water. So she just drank it. And as she's drinking, she's looking at me. And then she hands it back and she just gives me this beautiful smile like my grandmother. Like her expression, everything was grandma. And I was like, oh. And I was like, you don't want to come in? She's like, mm-mm. And I said, but where do you live? She goes, oh, just around. And I said, but I've never seen you because I used to walk around the neighborhood a lot, and I was like, I figured I'd see people. And she's like, oh, I've seen you.
Of course.
I said, oh, she goes, all the time. I said, oh. She goes, yes, you'll be okay. And I said, oh, okay. She goes, damn it. So I was like, oh, okay. And I was like, huh? Wait a minute. Was that my grandmother? It was so calming. It made me sad, happy, and confused, but calm.
Yeah. That's grief.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's such a charming story.
Yeah.
And my friend Gretchen and I say friend, she's also my kind of peer and mentor, and she has been my client too. We run a grief course together. So look, we run the 6-month grief journey together. She's kind of the person who's that person. But she always says when we have these little stories or these little coincidences, she says, we don't need to believe in it. Just let it be huge.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is lovely about the bracelet snapping and that Oba-chan coming to your door and like beaming like your grandma. It's just like, we don't, I mean, but I noticed this in your bio as well. Both of us have a degree in biology, I think. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So but that's something we have in common. So like, I love science. don't get me wrong, I love science, but I
Yeah.
also love a little bit of magic as well, you know,
Exactly.
let it be huge. Why not imagine that was some kind of visitation or something like that? I'm not about to go and, spend $1,000 to join a cult of that nature. I'm still pretty much grounded in reality, but why not let it be
Exactly.
huge?
Why not?
Let it be
That's
huge.
exactly. That's the magic of it.
Yes.
And I enjoy that. And I've shared this story before with other people, and they've had similar instances too, with grief and so on. And now that I have a master's of arts in interdisciplinary studies,
Amazing.
now I also, I like looking at these relationships in between that join all these, like the sciences, biology, philosophy, language, linguistics, all these things are intertwined, right? There's so
100%.
many commonalities.
Yeah.
We can't explain a problem just one way. We can't.
No, not at all. It's
Yeah.
all interdependent, and it's fascinating. It's fascinating, really fascinating. So that brings me, so we've just talked about Japan. So how did you get to, how do we get to Japan? Let's kind of, we've said we went to university, we studied biology. Good.
Yeah,
We can leave that behind. But what happens next? What was your journey to Japan? And then on to the next piece. What made you leave Japan? You
Yeah.
loved Japan, didn't you?
Oh, I did.
Yeah,
Oh,
you felt like part of the fabric to me when you were here. But hey, how dare you leave? But hey.
I love Japan so much.
So how did you get there, and what did you do? And
yeah, okay. It's funny. Someone was just asking me this the other day. So
Amazing.
basically, I didn't know much about Japan. So I got to Japan in 2001, right? And
Same.
yeah,
Same. May
So
2001.
20 years.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. February 8th, maybe. I can't remember,
Okay.
but early February.
Yeah.
And it was freezing. It was about -30 in Montreal when I left. And my parents, my brothers came to the airport with me. I had applied. So basically, I finished university. I was working at a bank before that, and I took my first ever vacation outside of, let's say, the Caribbean, to the Philippines the year before in 2000, with money that I had made at my first job after graduation. So I had some money. So some friends had invited me to their cousin's wedding in the Philippines in 2000. So that was, I remember, I think it was June 2000. And we had to fly. So it was Montreal, Vancouver to Manila. Sorry, Vancouver to Narita to Manila, right?
And Narita used to be the main international airport for
Exactly.
Tokyo.
Right.
Yeah.
So in 2000, back then, they were issuing, remember, paper tickets, and airlines were giving a free stay at a hotel if you had a long layover. So we had a long layover in Tokyo. So we arrived in the afternoon, and we were able to stay there until the next morning. So they included the hotel stay and whatever. So and it was a big group of us because there was a lot of the family and so on coming from Montreal to go to this wedding in the Philippines. So, yeah, so some of the group wanted to go into Tokyo, and everyone was like, yeah, we go to Tokyo. And then I think one person had said, Tokyo's far, like it's far. We're not in Tokyo now. So I was like, I don't know. We're in Japan. I don't know where we are. So, we got there in the evening. Sorry. So we couldn't really navigate where it was, right? So in the morning, when we got out of the hotel, looked around, we're like, wow, this is kind of cute. Like, it's a little cute place, cute little trucks driving around, and it's just cute. So I was like, And for the first time in my head, something was just like, maybe I'll be back. Maybe. But it wasn't like a strong feeling. It was just like, interesting place. Anyway, forgot about all that for a few months. And then at the end of 2000, one of my friends had gotten back in touch with me and said she had just finished a year in Japan teaching English. So I was like, oh, why Japan? So she's like, well, it's cool. It was nice. Da, 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 da. So I said, you speak Japanese? She's like, no, the usual questions.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
I was like, I don't speak Japanese. I don't know anything about Japan. I just know robots,
Yeah.
robots,
Yeah.
So she's like, no, Petra, it's not just robots. So I was like, okay, whatever. And I had never had Japanese food, nothing. So she said, try and apply. Like you could apply to the JET program, which she did, or I could apply to any of the language schools. So I applied to a language school and I got in. So I done. So in 3 months, it took like 3 months to process the visa, and I was on the plane to go.
Which language school out of interest?
Eon.
Okay.
Yes. So back then, the teacher who was leaving the company would get in touch with the new teacher. So I remember her name. Here's Laura. I don't remember her second name, but she was from, I think she was from Vancouver. I can't remember. But she had written me a letter explaining, back of the day letters, explaining, what to expect and everything. She would be there to greet me and all this stuff. And she had left certain things in the apartment for me and blah, blah, blah. So when I actually arrived so I was working in Machida, in Tokyo.
Yeah.
But my apartment was in Kanagawa in Sagamihara. So Sagamihara.
This story is like, we must have been going past each other on train. My office was in Machida when I moved there in May 2001, and I lived in Atsugi.
No.
Yes, I lived in Atsugi for the first 16 months I was in Japan. That's bonkers. So basically, for anybody who doesn't have the very, very, very high context of this corner of Japan, we were basically living on the same line, 2 or 3 stops from one another. And our offices were in the same town. Unbelievable. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So because Eon was on that, like, okay, off the JR Machida station, there was that thing, and you walk down, and there was a Don Quixote was after that. Sorry. It was before. I forget what that road is. It's going towards Tokyo Hands.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the left side.
That's main road. Yeah.
Yeah, that road. So
wow.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, so that's basically how I got to Japan. So it was I just wanted to change, and my friend encouraged me to go, and I just said, okay, I'll just be there for a year. That's it, just a year. And
Same.
Same, right? And with Eon, they said you can extend your contract by 3 months or by 6 months or by a year. So I said, okay, I'm only going to do an extra 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
So it was basically February 2001 to May 2002. And the time just went by so fast. I remember I cried the first night I actually stayed in my apartment because it was so small. I was like, what is this? I was like, what am I supposed to do in such a small space? How do you live? Like, it didn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Really didn't.
Yeah, especially coming from somewhere like Canada.
Yes.
It's such a culture shock, isn't it? But you get used to it somehow.
Yeah, you do. And then I got so used to it that when I moved here, my first apartment in Abu Dhabi was huge. And I was like, how am I going to live with this? How am I going to decorate all this?
So much space. It seems so wasteful, doesn't it? You're like, what? Why am I?
So after a year, I decided to move into a smaller apartment, and I stayed there for 4 years, basically, in a studio.
Wow.
And my friends would be like, Petra, are you okay? They're like, it's kind of small. It's nice, but it's small. So I said, it was nice. And then only during the pandemic, that's when I was like, I'm going crazy. So where I live now is back to spacious and
nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Like I've gotten used to being, living big, I guess.
So what kept you in Japan for how many years were you there? 10, 11?
Basically, it was a year and 3 months with a year and a half gap going back to Canada, thinking I was done. No more Japan. I did 15 months. I'm good. And I kept talking about Japan while I was back in Canada. I was just like, yeah, in Japan, they do like that in Japan. And it was just, people got sick of it. And they're like, well, why'd you go to Japan? So I was like, oh, maybe I should. So I just applied to some companies, and I got into a weird situation with the first company that hired me. Not very good. But all I can say is that I don't know how many foreigners in Japan get to sue a Japanese company and get their salary back.
Amazing. Well done.
I did it.
Good for you.
I got my money that I deserved, that they owed me. So after that, I was lucky enough to work for a company called Phoenix Associates, and I believe they've changed their name recently. And so I worked with them for the rest of the time that I was in Japan. And the great thing about working for a company like that was that, I guess you could call it dispatch work, or, was part-time contracts. So you work for certain companies that need you to teach English to their clients, and you kind of make your own schedule. So I had all this other time to do things, and I guess again, I was teaching adults, meeting people who were very interesting, sharing, talking, learning about Japanese culture. That's how I learned about Japanese culture, through, like you said, taxi drivers, and through my clients. They told me business etiquette. They told me even relationships, how, oh my gosh, one guy, how to cheat on your wife. Like, wow, God, I was like, that's too much information. But it's like stories that I remember.
Yeah.
I was like, what? And then even like I was almost like a therapist. Like, one of my students, would say how he hated the drinking culture, having to fake his life and drink just because it was necessary,
Nomunication, they called it. Not nomu, meaning drink in Japanese. Exactly. Nomunication. Yeah.
Yeah. And other instances of, some of the female clients telling me about the worst situations they had with harassment, like all kinds of stories, more and more stories, Yeah. So doing that, and I guess when people, when you get to, like, some of the contracts would be really short. So it might be like a month of teaching, this person at their office, or some would be years and years.
Yeah.
The longest was actually, so I was there for what, 8.5 years? Yeah, the longest client was from the beginning all the way to the end. He was like an uncle to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically through their asking about who I am, Canada. Oh, Canada's Black people? Yes. Oh, okay. So tell me more. So those little things. So after a while, I was like, well, maybe a lot of Japanese people would like to know, about this corner of the earth, like, about the Caribbean. Most people didn't know, So I said, okay, maybe that's what I should start doing. And then in 2009, I had the opportunity to go to Ghana. So one of my friends in Japan, she is married to a Japanese man, and she would go back to Ghana just to relax and, see her family and so on. So she said, just come along. So I went, and like how I was telling you about the books that had changed my perspective on things, about being Black in North America, being in Africa was completely, oh my goodness, changed my universe.
Oh my God. Tell me, how did you feel when you stepped off the plane and stepped in? Was it like,
it was like feeling just, even though I didn't look Ghanaian, right? Mm-hmm. I was African. And I was like, oh, okay. I felt, especially coming from Japan, where I'm stared at as complete other. Oh, she's Black. Kokujin. Oh, Gai Kokujin.
Yeah.
Gaijin.
Yeah.
In Ghana, African, Black. Okay, fine, you're Black. And the food. So when I had the food, I was like, wait a minute. I know this food from the Caribbean. I mean, we changed it a little bit. but it's the same food. It was just like the energy. I was just like, oh my gosh, this place is just, it got me feeling so good. And but the hardest thing was when I went to Cape Coast. And Cape Coast is one of the, I guess, the towns along the Atlantic that had the slave castles. So, but the thing is, that day I remember, because it was like in April, it was during Golden Week I'd gone, and I didn't know what to expect. I just knew that at the beginning of the day, I decided to go to the one of the national parks, just to go hiking. And then I took a taxi and he brought me to Cape Coast. And I thought, okay, I'm going to Cape Coast. It's a slave castle. However, it was me and some other, I think 2 other women who were on the tour. So we went and they explained, there's a plaque that explains that it's, how can I say it? You have, at this point, try not to bring your anger towards other people. Like, what's the word? Like, from what I understood of what they were trying to say, because I can't remember exactly what the words were, but it's like, don't go taking your anger out on white people right now because, of what happened here. So I was like, okay, like, still, I was really naive. I was like, okay, I don't know what I'm gonna see. So we go into the dungeon, and all of a sudden I just feel this heaviness. I was just like, whoa. So it's not, it hasn't been cleaned. There's, this is centuries of human waste and suffering. And it was heavy. Like, I can't put it into words. It was just overwhelming.
Yeah.
Sadness that you could just feel. You could feel what, if it's spirits, whatever it is, you could feel it. Suffering. And right above it was a church. Church. Overlooking the Atlantic. And then they brought us to the different chambers. So where the bad slaves would well, no, the regular slaves captives would be put in one room, the males separate from the females. And again, from doing my own research, basically, there are many tribes, right? So they would find, let's say, if there was a battle going on, some of the tribes that had lost the battles would be captured and enslaved. So that's what happened. So many people died in the first part of being captive in that fort. The ones who survived were taken on ships, right? So just before they leave the castle, there's a sign that says the door of no return that was printed. I think they put that there in the 90s. And then on the other side of it, they put the door of return, because they had some ceremonies where people like me from the diaspora came back, and there was one part of the castle, of the dungeon, I would say, where they said they put the bad slaves. And when the man opened the door, me and the other women, we stepped back. One of them started crying. I almost started crying because it was so, whatever spirits were there were like, literally, it felt like they were coming at us, like whatever force. It was just a very strange feeling. And I remember, because my friend wasn't able to come with me. She was pregnant at the time. So she was, I had a mobile phone, and I told her, my taxi guy had left. So after that little emotional tour, I was like, and I was like 2 hours away from the city. I was like, what do I do? How do I get out of here? So I put her on the phone with somebody to get me somewhere. So I ended up getting back. So when I got back to the hotel, I called my parents and started crying.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it was very, 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 very emotional. And it just, and then this leads to why I left Japan, because not that day, but a few days after that, we found out that my father had cancer.
Mm.
And they didn't want to tell me on my trip, but they ended up telling me because I felt something was wrong. And so basically, from that time to when he passed, is one of the reasons that I left is just because of grief, you know, because it was getting hard to live away from family,
Mm.
and I felt I needed to be home.
Thank you for sharing that story, Petra. It is a lot, and our bodies know. I almost feel like it's a weird thing I say. It feels like your DNA twitches sometimes,
Yeah.
or something, or those ancestral lines. And those ships then went on to my hometown of Liverpool.
Yes.
And I don't think of that place the same as I used to in the last. It's a bit trite, but there's a slave museum there, and you go, oh, but
Yeah.
it's not the same as like when you really properly read, like I think it was Rennie Lodge White, I think is her name, a woman who wrote Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race. And she's a British author, and she wrote an account of what it, I mean, people from Liverpool have this really great pride in like the maritime history and all this kind of stuff. But she wrote 3 pages of like how she went there and she could feel that what you just described, felt. She could feel that in the walls, in the buildings, in the streets, in the street names. And that flipped something in my body as well, which is interesting. And I haven't been back since, because that was at the beginning of the pandemic, maybe, that I started getting into that book. So it's there's a lot of you talked about it in Grenada as well, and then this unresolved stuff, especially for, we're using the word white people, because oftentimes it's seen as somebody else's problem, not that we don't hold that, and we hold that too.
That's what it is. That's yeah.
So it's I think this is a story that does need to be told, and exactly beautifully in the way that you said it there, that kind of contrast between arriving and feeling so full, and then going there and feeling all of it,
completely like drained, because it's like, so whether or not that was where my ancestors came from, they came from one of those castles along the coast, and they survived that. Then they survived the ships. Then they survived the treatment on plantations. Like it was too much, honestly. It was, I was like, so it's so heavy. And the millions of people who didn't survive. So yeah, it's such a heavy topic, and that's why, like, I really try, like for Black people, even for Africans, there are a lot of Africans who I've met who who also disconnect themselves from it. They say, oh yeah, it was somebody here in our country who did that. It may not have been someone I was really, like they don't necessarily see that, wait a minute, that was your cousin who left, who was taken. You know what I mean? They don't see that. Or your brother, as your ancestors' brothers who were ripped apart. So there's still a lot, there's that other dialogue of, well, now who do you blame? So it couldn't just be the slave owner. It couldn't just be the European slave owner who was only to blame. Yes, it was a big system. Yes, we get it. But somebody on the African side might have helped him. So there has to be there's so many levels to it.
So many, Petra, so many. And my knowledge, my deep knowing is that that system replicates itself over and over and over again in all. And that's not to take away from there, but it's that kind of whatever that was, whatever that is, when one person's like, no way, you're not taking that person, but then the other cousin's like, go for your life, thanks for the cash. It's like humanity has a lot of cruelty.
It does. And
yeah,
I didn't even realize that when I first went to Zanzibar, that Zanzibar has the same history. Like East Africa has the same history as West Africa when it's a slave trade, but it happened on the Indian Ocean.
Going the other direction.
Yeah. So, and again, there's certain things I can't talk about the people who are involved in that because of where I live right now. So
yeah, sure. And we should start to wrap up shortly because we could stay here all day. This
right.
is, I mean, but this is fascinating. I mean, it's, I don't know if fascinating is the right word, but like my I'm interested, put it that way. I'm interested, and my interest is not, it's not foreshadowed by my sadness and my shame and my feelings about this and the physical way that but my interest remains with those things. And if I can stay with that interest and those feelings without having to kind of make some kind of codependent soup in there, that's one of the things, Petra, that allows me to kind of stay with these stories, which is hard. It's hard for people to do that without defensiveness or fragility.
That's it, the defensiveness, because with Black people overall in the West, right?
Yes.
Let's say the West.
Yes.
Is that it's always there. We can't hide from these microaggressions or macroaggressions. We can't. I remember I had a coworker who was from Australia, and she was of Palestinian ancestry, and she had gone through a lot of issues growing up in Australia back in the 70s and 80s and 90s, because she had the olive complexion, the dark brown hair, where a lot of the people that she went to school with were blondes, right? Blue-eyed. So it was that ideal. Again, it was that Eurocentric beauty standard, right? And she was called, they have these names for that type of people. So she said she understood, how it was for me. So I said, okay, I understand, you understand, but when we look at it, you're still white. And she was like, well, I said, you may not consider yourself white, but if you and I are together, you're most likely going to get treated better than me.
Interesting.
So that's when she shook, she started crying. Like she's just, oh, and she goes, and I said, it's okay. I said, because I know, I said, you just have to understand that.
Yeah.
I said, there's levels. And I said, now, that's what it is, that it's not just, oh, we got treated badly because we're not blondes. It's that, oh, beyond that, you can get through many things just because you're not Black. So, yeah. So it's one of those things I think a lot of people don't realize. Yeah. And they think, oh, well, those Black people are just complaining. Oh, no, we're not just complaining. Yeah. I mean, I can study, I can travel, I can do everything. It doesn't mean that just because I'm observing something that's real, that I can't do anything or that I'm lazy.
Oh, yeah,
right?
You have to look after yourself really well, don't you? There's just a level of looking after oneself. I mean, the word self-care is so overused in so many places now, but there's I was talking to somebody about this the other day, but in a different context. We were talking about ADHD. So like that, and all the kind of ways that people have to mask and put themselves up and like put lots of different kind of things in place, but it's the same but different. It's that it's that constant vigilance. It's that constant knowing and explaining. And also there's, that's what my understanding is anyway, that you have to do one hell of a lot loads more maintenance just to do the same normal thing as another person.
I have a friend who suffers from that, and that's pretty much what she's described. And she's been tired.
Just tired. And it's the same for what you're talking about. I mean, I'm only saying that because it's also ADHD Awareness Month. But so I'm interviewing somebody who's ADHD in a couple of weeks, but it's in a different context. That's because I want to.
It's code switching.
I'm not saying it's the same. Oh yeah, code switching. But in ADHD world, they call it masking, or we call it masking. So you have to mask to kind of pretend you're okay, and you're trying constantly scanning. Am I saying the right thing? Is it wrong? Am I like this kind of stuff? So that's but sorry, Petra, I don't mean to kind of hijack this with ADHD-ness, but it just it's that kind of it's that extra effort that can help make you burn out quicker, or that makes you want to plead with people. Please hear me. Please just listen to what I'm telling you. This is not up for discussion. This is me telling you information. This isn't a high school debate, right? Give me a break. Give me every goddamn day. This is my life, right?
That's it.
Yeah, and this is me talking as you, as I understand what you just said. I got very passionate there. I'm gonna smell some lemon oil, bring me back down to earth. Maybe I should shake my cowrie shells as well.
Right. So that's the thing. So if you're going through that with that, then you see exactly, the parallel and how tiring it can be. So in Africa, there's a level of less masking going on.
Oh yeah, but you can't mask, right?
Right.
Like I can't mask in Japan. There's no masking that I'm not Japanese, that you can't mask. And again, I'm not saying, because I get to be, I'm going to use your words here, and this makes me feel uncomfortable to say it. I'm not black.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So there's an element of unblackness. Is that what I'm understanding?
No, I guess, non-blackness, unblack. I don't know what it is, but that's what it is. Yeah.
You that was your words you used before, which was like, that was another revelation to me.
And that's basically it.
Okay.
Oh, Sarah, it's been a pleasure. This is great.
No, you probably need to get on with your day as well. So my darling, what's next for you?
What's next? Oh my goodness. Well, for those people who are listening, I would be open to your suggestions. What does a woman who has all this experience in teaching adults, teaching high school, has a degree, a master's degree in interdisciplinary studies, what should I do? I really feel that whatever the next step is, right, after, let's say after teaching in Abu Dhabi, is definitely still teaching in a way. Like, I think I'm always a teacher. So Japan helped me realize that I'm a teacher.
Yeah.
And I love teaching. So it may not be high school English, but it will be something else. Consulting, whatever it is. I definitely see, and teaching, diversity, culture. That's what I see. It's something there. Either I'm going to have to make it myself, or somebody has it ready-made for Petra to continue and to pass the torch. So that's what's next for Petra.
Well, I'm going to say, let's talk. Let's have a coaching session. I'll give you a coaching session and let's talk about it and see what we can make happen.
Definitely.
Instigate or ignite. Oh my God, how amazing. And so oh God, I don't want to get off. I want to keep going. This is awful, but I've got to close it because it's, because you're not mine. Oh, I can't do it. It's awful. It's like I don't want to ask my closing question. I've enjoyed this so much.
And the kitten.
Just
the kitten.
Oh, amazing. Bring the kitten in. Kitten guest appearance.
I think she's trying to say hello.
Mommy, it's time. It's time. Hey,
Selena.
Neko-chan. Oh my God, look at that gorgeous. That looks like a cat that would be in a sarcophagus.
Right. They're the Arabian mouse.
Right.
They are mouse. They are the original, regal. Look at her little regalness. Look at her.
Oh my God, she's so beautiful. Different to the cats over here, aren't they? The kind of thinner and bigger ears.
Her brother is white, and he's not gotten used to me yet. He does not seem to want to get to know me, just as long as I give him food.
Yeah. Amazing. So, teaching diversity and culture. I see it. So you're ready for your next move, and you're out there in Abu Dhabi. Yeah. So how long have you been there, by the way?
Oh my gosh, 7.5 years.
God, I can't believe it's been that long.
Again,
yeah.
I thought it was only going to be 2 years.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, we should have learned our lessons by now about that little chestnut. So Petra, there are many ways to lead a life. What does that mean to you?
Oh, leading your life. Wow. Basically, as each year passes, you're going to start feeling where there's a point where if you haven't been listening to yourself, it's going to hit you in the face. And you're just going to say, oh, okay, I'm listening. Yes, this is it. You can't get away from it. If in your 20s you thought, oh yeah, this is what I can do. You're going to slowly start seeing, no, that's not what you're supposed to do. And if you keep doing that, then boop, something's going to hit you. And you're going to be like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. It just comes. With teaching, I didn't know I was ever going to be a teacher. Never. Japan pulled that out of me.
Yeah. And
then I realized my grandfather was a teacher. My uncle is a teacher. My mom has been a part-time teacher. My cousins are teachers. My sister's a teacher. There's so many teachers in my family. So it's probably just something that we do.
Yeah.
So that's it.
If you haven't been listening to yourself, it's going to come back and hit you in the face. I love that's probably going to be one of your taglines. I just love it. Oh my God, that means so much to me as well. I mean, I literally made a diary entry the last couple of weeks going, how the hell did I get here again? Completely overwhelmed, doing loads of things, sitting on loads of committees. What am I doing?
Right.
I basically want to lie around doing art and writing, but no, I mean, I love it. I love it as well. But I was like, wow, what's happened? So I love that. If you haven't been listening to yourself, it's going to hit you in the face. Petra, it's been an absolute joy. And an education and so much information download. Thank you so much for your generous sharing of so many stories and so much history and so much information. It was just, it's so generous and so tender as well. And where can people find you if they do want to kind of connect with you, or if they're interested?
Sure, they can find me on Instagram at Natural Travel. So that's NAPTURAL travel. Natural, natural as in the nappy curly curls.
Yeah. And it's got a little kind of Laptiste feeling about it as well.
Kind of. Well, hey, I didn't realize that, but that's true. The PT. Look at that, Sarah.
Okay, so Natural Travel, that's your Instagram handle. And
that's the best way to get to me.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay, so thank you once again. Thank you everybody for listening. I believe there are many, many ways to lead a life, and I'm just kind of blown away on the journey that Petra's just taken us around around the world, basically, literally around the world. And, you know, everybody has stories. And this is a story that I not only listen to, but I feel that I want to hold. I think I hold this story, and it's a story we all hold. And I'm so, so grateful to you, Petra. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. It's just, I can't wait to actually see you again. Like,
Yes, and give you a big
seriously,
hug.
one day, I don't know when I'll be in Japan, but seriously, like,
Yeah.
thank you for giving me the chance to, you know, to teach you palancing and Caribbean cooking and all that. That's just,
loved it.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
still
and just to be clear, I didn't do any of the cooking. I was on the cocktail making. I was like, you were like, does somebody want to burn the aubergines and skin them? I was like, no. Somebody else was like, hey, does anybody want to chop the veg and do this? And I was like, is there anything else to do? You were like, cocktails. Me, I'll do that. Give me the blender and the rum.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, thank you, Petra.
Welcome, Sarah.